Okay, so these videos are supposed to be about property as much as anything else, and I am still relatively new to property investing, but I have bought my second investment property recently. We're working on the third, and obviously I've been spending a lot of time getting educated and learning how to do this stuff properly. And so the idea was that I would do some property videos for people that are just starting out on that journey themselves. Just like I said, to highlight and shine a light on a few of these things that you just don't know about until you start reading up and understanding it. So obviously a lot of people, for me this was the case, when you think of property investing you think of buy-to-let and buying a property to rent out to a single family, and that's where a lot of people see property investing. But when you start learning about these things, there are just so many different strategies above and beyond that that allow people to invest in property for better cash flow, for bigger deals, or even without any money of their own to start with, or small amounts of money. You don't need a big pot of money to get invested in property. And so this video today is really just back to basics, just to highlight some of those, so that those newer property investors can have that little light shone on some of these strategies, just so that people can see what's out there. So like I say, the one that everyone probably knows about is buy-to-let, and of course I've already spoken about the potential for investing in buy-to-let property in the right way, rather than necessarily just getting a deposit, buying a property, sitting and having it let. There's definitely more you can do about that. I'm going to expand on that in the future. See, I've actually done my little plan of what I'm going to talk about in the future. So I've actually got an idea of what I'm going to talk about over the next week or so. So that has given me a good idea about that. Anyway, but tonight I'm just going to do a quick intro to lots of the different strategies, and then we'll expand on those over the next few days. So like I say, buy-to-let. Buy a house, rent it out to a family. The rent covers the mortgage, covers the costs of running the property, gives you income on a monthly basis. That is some proportion above the mortgage and all those costs. But then the next strategy that people, I don't know, with my property investing, I feel like I'm going to work my way up through these strategies. So the next strategy that people might go into would be something like HMOs, where you're buying a larger property and splitting it up and renting it out by the room. And room rental rates can be not that far behind what you might rent a whole house out for, but of course the room rental includes the costs. So you have additional costs as the investor, as the owner of the building, because you have to pay for gas and electric and water and decent broadband and all that sort of thing. But because you're renting it out by the room, you might have 4, 5, 6 rooms rented out, and so your overall cash flow coming in is a lot higher. So there's a bigger margin between what you're taking in and what is going out. And so HMOs are a sort of graduation because they are more intensive to run and require potentially more investment up front, but yeah, can be a bigger cash flowing strategy. I've introduced it as graduation, but now that kind of falls apart. But no, maybe it's not. Commercial conversions is another potential thing. So this is where you take an old commercial building like offices, or barn conversions come under it, and convert that into livable premises. So for offices, obviously tend to strip them out and redo them as flats. And those can be quite high yielding. You're obviously into much bigger investment there, and certainly much bigger project management. But there's a variety of options with what you do with the flats once you've completed. You can either convert and sell or convert and let out. Really interesting big scale stuff for those that go to that level. And then another strategy is serviced accommodation. I wouldn't say this is necessarily a graduation from commercial conversion, it's just the order that I've done them in. Serviced accommodation is taking a property and letting it out on sites like Airbnb or Booking.com as an alternative to hotel accommodation. Serviced accommodation allows you to house more people than hotel rooms, give them home comforts, and give them a home from home while they're staying in the area, either on business or visiting friends or in the area for whatever reason. And that's quite hot in the property market at the moment. It's a bit like HMOs in that you're taking on more of the costs. You're taking on the running costs of the property from day to day, but because you're dividing up how the house is used differently, i.e. you're letting it out by the night, it's higher cash flow and you're able to charge a higher rate per day than you would essentially be getting from a buy-to-let. So that's another strategy that's out there. And all of those obviously take some degree of investment, but the really clever things that are tying everything together now and giving people the opportunity to invest in property with a smaller pot of starting capital is things like rent-to-rent deals. So this is where a landlord might own one of these large properties that would be suitable for HMOs, but they're not interested in the hassle of running it as a HMO. Like I say, it takes more management because you're constantly getting tenants in and out, and there's those relationships between the tenants to manage as well. And someone might not be interested in using their property for that. They would rather rent it out on a normal buy-to-let basis. Well, the rent-to-rent people will come in and rent that property from a landlord with a property that's suitable for HMO, separate it out into the rooms, potentially refurb it and get it into the condition that's suitable for that, and then rent it out by the room. So they're then, rather than having a mortgage cost plus the bills to cover, they've got the rental cost plus the bills to cover. But the income from the rooms is still relatively high, still covers those costs nicely, and makes them a profit from a property that they don't even have to own. So if you are interested in property investing and are not sitting on atop a mountain of gold, as I'm sure we'd all love to be, rent-to-rent is a potential way into it. Now, I'm rattling off these strategies because I know about them and I want to share them for people that haven't heard of these, that are just getting started. But I have only really done buy-to-let, and Amy and I have trained in service accommodation, and we're going to be taking on our third investment property and running that as serviced accommodation soon. But things like rent-to-rent I don't have any particular experience of, but it's great to know that it's there, because there are options to do that out there that we may well start investigating sooner rather than later. It's really appealing because obviously it just doesn't take that much capital up front. You don't need a deposit for a house. You need a rental deposit, you need a first month's rent, you potentially need a little bit of refurb costs. But for less than £10,000, you could potentially get a HMO set up, which is awesome. And And rent to rent can be done for HMOs. It can be done for renting out a property and turning it into using it for serviced accommodation, which is where it might come in handy for growing our serviced accommodation business. Yeah, it just looks really cool. Like I say, I may talk about it in a bit more detail, but only to introduce the concept a bit more broadly. I won't be talking from any particular experience from that. And then there's some where you don't even need any of your own money. So deal packaging is another strategy that allows you to work in the property arena, make good money from property without, again, needing pots of cash for deposits. So deal packaging is going out and finding great properties, great investment opportunities for an investor, and then packaging that deal up so that it's ready to go, a purchase price has been agreed, and then you can find the investor and hand the deal off to them to buy, and they will pay you a fee for having done all the legwork to find it, because it takes a lot of effort to be a deal packager, to go out and cultivate relationships with estate agents, or to build the skills to negotiate direct to vendor and find those great off-market deals. And so those skills are valuable, and for investors that don't have the time to go out and cultivate those relationships themselves, sourcers, deal packagers are just going to be great for bringing those deals to them, so that they don't have to do that legwork. And so those skills are valuable, and so people get paid for doing it. And then people are using that to replace their job income, to build up pots for themselves, or potentially to partner and buy property with some of their investors. So that's a very low cost of entry, potentially. And then the other way to make money from property is to potentially, I alluded to it there, to be an investor, hands-off investor, and to lend your money or to partner with someone, and to get a return on your cash pot without necessarily having to go out and find the deals and buy the property and organise the refurb yourself. So that takes the money, but it is less hands-on, less time-consuming. So if you don't need to know the nuts and bolts, or don't want to know the nuts and bolts, that could be an option as well. So I think that's the quick rundown that I wanted to do tonight of all of the different strategies, and maybe hopefully for some people that are new to this, it might have just, like I say, shone a light on something, or sparked a light bulb moment for someone to say, oh, that sounds interesting. Oh, I didn't realise you could get involved in property without any of your own money. It all sounds a little bit gimmicky, I imagine, but it's real. There are people out there doing it, and again, I've mentioned this before, you can go out and follow people on Facebook and join communities where there are people doing this from day to day, and it is real. It's definitely an opportunity for people to get involved in property investing that didn't think that they could. Like I say, I'm going to talk a bit more detail about each of those strategies in the future, not from any particular level of experience, just to solidify the ideas in my head, and to hopefully shine a light on them for some people that haven't heard of these in any real detail before. So yeah, let me know if you've got any questions about those, because like I say, this might trigger something for a couple of people, so that'd be nice. Cheers, bye.